All right, we are live. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 13th, 2024 joint presentation of the Litchfield School Board Budget and Budget Committee budget presentation. The time is now 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, just as a reminder, this is our second of two joint review sessions of the school budget with both the school board and the budget committee here in attendance at the fire station tonight. There will be no voting tonight. This is simply the second, again, review session with several members of the school district. The voting will commence next week, November 20th, at our regularly scheduled school board meeting beginning at 5:30, again next Wednesday the 20th, over at Town Hall. Before we get into the budget review session, I do want to start off with a separate topic. It's a topic that has been on the What's Up page as of yesterday and today, and is top of mind for a lot of residents in town. And that is regarding the tax rate setting and when tax bills are going to be going out for the residents. It has been brought to my attention that the tax bills are delayed in being distributed from the town, and that is directly attributed to a delay on the school side in getting our tax rate set with the state. What I'd like to do is turn it over to the superintendent for an update on this, so we can address it head on and take accountability for this delay.
Yeah, so the tax rate is being delayed because of us, the school district. That's 100% correct. So part of the process with setting the tax rate is we have to complete something called a DOE 25 for the Department of Ed. It's a pretty lengthy process and document. Essentially, it's an accounting document to make sure that everything we spent is accounted for. We spent our taxes properly, we spent them on what we said we were going to do, so on and so forth. So we've been working on that for the past few months in the SAU office. It's challenging for us. This is not an excuse, but just reality. We have a lot of new people in the SAU. There's myself, new superintendent, Julie Darling here is to my left, she's our new business administrator, and two other prominent administrators in the SAU. So we've been working really hard on this, but we want to make sure we do it correctly. And this is the first time we've ever been working on this document. So we've been in a lot of contact with the Department of Ed, working, sending our draft and our document back and forth, getting feedback on it, making sure that we're doing things correctly, chipping away when we've had incorrect things in there, telling us where to look for this information. Doug Totten, who's been our former BA, has been very helpful. You know, Doug, because that's what we're doing. We're referring on Doug's notes and all his bookkeeping from last year to do this document. So it's making sense of what he did in his process. It's translating it to us right now, and we've been chipping away at this process. We've been submitting almost daily to the state to make sure that we're up to snuff. They've been giving us updates. Our latest submission today, we feel pretty confident that it should be all set, and everything else has been zeroed out, and we've accounted for everything. So that's the hope. We'll hear tomorrow morning if there's anything else to do with that, or if we're in good shape. But we know that it's on us that this tax rate hasn't been set yet. We apologize for that. It is a new process for us, and it's a learning curve for us as well. You know, next year, as long as we all have jobs, I say that half kiddingly, half serious, you know, we'll be even better at it and be able to get ahead of some things that we were learning for the first time this year. So again, we apologize for the delay. We're working hard. It's not any malintent on our part, but we know it's very, very important to get the financial things straight and correct, and that there's no errors there. We would hate to have taxes go out with an incorrect tax rate, so we are just making sure 100% whatever we send out is correct. So that's where we are in the process.
Yeah, thank you. And again, we certainly apologize to the residents in town for this delay. We take full accountability for this error, or for this delay, I should say. And again, as of this afternoon, we have submitted with the state. We're hopeful that the state will accept our submissions, and we'll be back on track here hopefully tomorrow. And we have been in regular communications with the town hall and the administration over there. So, all right. Any questions from those in the room on that?
Just thank you for your transparency and honesty. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fun. But, you know, like I said, it's the first time for us, and we've been hard at work on it. And, you know, it's definitely a learning curve to do this side of stuff from the SAU office, but we feel good about it. We'll feel even better about it next year when we do it. But yeah, we want to make sure we take accountable for our actions, so.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to close the loop, I know there's an active thread on the WhatsApp page and some communications out there. The district, I will be, on behalf of the board, will be posting an update on behalf of the school board tonight in the district. Okay.
In line with what was said.
In line with what was just said.
Thank you.
With that, we will move into the continuation of our budget review. So,
Mr. Cutter, before we jump in, can we speak to the schedule changes real quick that
Sure.
we had emailed out and talked about? You can do that or I can do that. Okay, you need to?
Please go ahead.
So just so everybody's aware, we made some slight modifications to our kind of overall school budget process, and I just want to talk through that. So the original plan was the budget committee was going to meet tomorrow night to start our review process. We had some folks that were going to be out of town. We in talked with Mr. Cutter as well, knowing that the school was going to be voting on the 20th, and we had the 21st set aside as a if needed date. Felt it made a lot more sense to just not meet tomorrow night, let the school board have time to vote, make sure all of our members are present, and that we do our review on the evening of the 21st. It might potentially mean a longer evening that evening, but felt like that was the right thing to do. I talked with Mr. Taylor about it, talked to Mr. Cutter about it, and we all felt good about that. So I just want to make sure we communicated that openly. I know that Mr. Brunel was updating the town website with all the correct dates and information.
So November 20th, next Wednesday, our school board meeting. That's when voting will commence for school board. November 21st will be budget committee review. I don't know if you're going to be voting that night or
We
not.
will not vote that evening. Our voting date
It'll be
is
December 5th.
December 5th, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you for that update.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the second part of our budget proposal. So, last week we presented personnel in the schools and kind of a big picture view of everything. We're going to continue more today with our directors going through their respective budgets. Just a quick reminder for everyone, we have question forms open for both the school board and the budget committee for questions regarding anything that they see in our budget. We've been trying as a team to answer the questions and as we can, as we see them pop up. So please feel free to keep adding to those questions and what they are. We do our best to make sure we can answer them. So when we get to the point to have dialogue about them, we can talk about them and know what we're looking for ahead of time. So just a reminder to do that. Please feel free to add questions as we go. So I'm going to turn things over to Lauren Crowley, our food services director, to go over dining services.
Thank you. All right, so dining services this year, we do have a couple very minor increases, but still a couple increases nonetheless. Our total increase that we are requesting is just under 13.5. The majority of the increases actually take place at Griffin and at the district level. So just the district dues and fees, they went up a total of $870. My School Nutrition Association membership fee increased $70, and the New Hampshire buying group dues, which we have always paid, they've always been paid for. We've found another way to pay them, but it's never, I don't know why it's never been budgeted, but we put it in the budget this year. And that's $800 to be a part of the New Hampshire buying group, which gives us all the bid prices and I'm gonna say deals on how we get our food. The director supply line did increase by $500, and that goes hand in hand with our new contract because we switched to hours. The support staff, including the kitchen staff, has 5 extra days that I need to provide PD or training for, and that averages to about $100 per day for training supplies. I could get speakers, things of that variety. I'll try to get some speakers in to do that. So that's where that increase came from. The biggest, like I said, the biggest increases were at Griffin in the food and equipment lines, specifically totaling about $10,500. The food line, we increased to $10,000 based on last year's actuals. And the equipment line increased, we took out the hotel pans, but moved that $500 up to the equipment lines because we need new shelves per the health inspector. Our shelves have seen better days, and some of them are starting to rust through, so I'm looking to get some better shelves down there, like I said, based on that. Other than that, the other 2 schools had a decrease of $500 each because, again, I took out those hotel pans that we got last year, or this year I should say, that we didn't need going forward. And I was asked to also give a slight update for where we're at currently in this school year. So on there we go, on the next slide. So this is through October 31st. Our expenditures so far this year have been $181,000, $181,164. Just to break that down, because in theory, the National School Lunch Program should be self-funded. I understand that, we are not. But this is what it breaks down to, is operationally, that's food, equipment, repairs, everything that I just kind of presented on. We've only spent $61,060, and the rest of it comes from labor. That's salaries, that's benefits, and all that encompass with that. Our revenues, this includes October's reimbursement, which isn't on any official report yet, but it is coming to us, is just over $96,000. And what I did was for projections for the year, I multiplied those by 4 since we were at the end of the quarter, and came up with these projected revenues and expenditures, and again, broke the expenditures down by operations and labor.
So, are you projecting a shortfall of $300,000? When I look at expenses and revenue, there's quite a
There is. And this is, again, this is just, we
It's
wrote
still a
the,
little more than 300,000.
Yeah.
And didn't we project like 150?
That's why I'm raising the question.
So, oh my gosh.
I just took the numbers we had in front of us. There's 4 quarters in the year, that was the end of the first quarter.
What was our difference last year from revenue to expenditure?
I don't remember off the top, it was like 70.
74,000 is
Yeah.
what
Nowhere
we
near
put
this
in.
amount.
Like
So,
five,
Again,
five.
this is just, like I said, it was just that. It was just, this is what we've done so far, I multiplied it by 4. This doesn't mean it's actually this. It's just based on the numbers we had right now.
But would there be any reason why we'd expect the next 3 quarters to be any different?
I would hope for more revenues, because as my staff come back, because I have multiple staff, I have 2 available positions. I have multiple staff out for various reasons. Today alone, I had half of my department out today. So we can't always operate the full experience of the dining services department, which includes vending, which includes catering operations and all this other stuff, to come in when we don't have the staff to do it. Because currently I'm working at all 3 schools on any given day, some days multiple schools in a day. So this could very well go up, the revenues could go up, because we still have some catering and stuff unaccounted for at this point in time. But again, this is just based on this numbers. I would anticipate a smaller gap to be.
So I would encourage the school district to look at that as a whole, because some of us remember when this was self-funded and weren't very happy with how this got put into the budget. So to see a deficit that was originally disliked at 150 is now grown to 350. There needs to be a plan to wrap around that.
It's not going to be
I'll take a better look at the projections,
Thank
and
you.
we'll take a look at to see what we did last year as far as if we're on the same trajectory.
Yeah, we definitely need to take a look at
Yes.
this at our next board meeting next week, because if we need to be thinking about a
Yep.
better, more accurate budget number, we need to plan for that now.
Well, not to mention, you might have a hole in your budget this year if this continues.
This isn't going, I would, like I said, this was just the numbers that I had. I don't anticipate this, but it's just based on the 4 quarters with the numbers we had. So my apologies
Take a better look.
for the shock, it wasn't my intention, but I was just trying to do what I was asked to do.
Is the participation rate way down?
No,
So our revenues can't be, our revenues can't be much, we increased the lunch
Right,
price.
that's what I-
We
So there's
increased the
no,
lunch price and we didn't see a drop in participation.
no, I know, but my point is that the revenues can't be, it'd be shocking if they were lower than last year, if we increase, if we don't have a drop in purchases and.
I think we have to look at these numbers.
We will, exactly.
And break it down. I think it'd be good to report out at our meeting next week on how we came to these. I mean, just off the top of my head, thank you, Lauren, for preparing this
Yes.
in this capacity. I don't imagine that will just quadruple the operation cost, for example, right? The
Probably
operation
had
costs, I
startup
would
costs.
Thank you,
imagine,
because, yeah, I just, again, I was just going
Good.
based on what I knew to
Yep.
do, so.
Would be like some of the things we've already bought. You mentioned the new hotel pans, well, that's
Yeah.
not an expense that we're gonna, I know that's very minuscule in the big
But
scheme
still,
of things.
that's
but just
still
a simple
$1,500,
example
so that
To
is.
show that that's not gonna be multiplied by
Correct.
4 over the course of the year.
And that includes also the, you know, the state products that has already been accounted for and everything that we have to order the year prior, so.
Yep.
It's
So I would
not-
imagine that operational cost is
That won't
much
be as
significantly less
significant.
than what is stated right there.
Mhm.
But we will go into more detail next week at our board meeting.
Okay. A question on.
Sure.
A smaller question, on GMS, what's the reason for the 10K increase at GMS? Is that just more kids?
Food
eating more?
actuals based on last year. That's what we spent on food last year. And I believe last year we had, I think it was last year, we had $44,000.
Yeah, 65,385.
Yep, so that's what I based on for this one, for this coming school year.
Well, that'll bring me to my question then.
Sure.
If you're basing it on last year, it was 65. LMS and CHS are the exact same amount
Yep,
as this year,
correct.
yet 24 was different.
Mhm.
LMS in 24 was 66, yet we're budgeting 75. CHS was 88, we're budgeting 90,000. I realize that GMS is 9 more students expected, but there's also 23 less at the high school. So,
I didn't, because we significantly went over that food line at Griffin is the only reason why I expanded that one and not the other two. They were right around that, the mark where we had budgeted them for.
well, LMS, you went up $11,000.
Right, because from 23 to 24, we had gone up and needed that to buy that food to feed the kids.
From 23 to 24, you went down.
23 to 24.
From 80,000
back
to
at it.
69,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
The actual. I have to look at that again, sorry. Pull that up.
So at the end of this year, or end of next year, will we own the vending machine, or does it cycle beginning again?
We will own it at the end of this year.
Is it-
No, I'm sorry, at the end of next year.
Right,
Next year's payment year 4 of 4.
right. And is that, are we seeing a projection that we'll have positive revenue from that?
Yes,
So going back to what I was just asking.
Yes.
that These numbers don't seem right, and what I'm concerned about, that it falls into this chart right here, which is like culture shock, so that the rest of the evening is gonna go nice and smooth, because there will be nothing like this, but
Oh, no, don't worry, everybody gets treated individually.
but these numbers, they don't make any sense, that we're just like maintaining, so there's like no cost increase expected for next year?
there are cost increases, but we have worked around a way at the other two schools. What had happened is in previous years, we had cut that budget at Griffin quite harshly based on actuals from years previous. We have new staff in that have done really, really great work and actually really boosted the participation down there, that they are now needing more of those, more food lines and money in the food line to feed the kids.
But shouldn't that be offset by added revenue though? If we're selling more, we should have
Yep.
more revenue to help offset that purchase.
And there is, but just, again, the labor it gets us into that's where we have the issues with the labor costs.
So when we price out our lunches or our food meals, are we pricing just the cost of the goods, or do we factor in the labor?
We do factor in for the prices that I can control, which is not the meal prices, I do factor in the labor, yes.
I think one of the challenging things about food service just in general is that many school districts are in the red on it, you know, and I think that's something we talk about in kind of our statewide meetings and our statewide groups. What are we gonna do to address this? Because most school districts are in the red when it comes to their food service. Some for hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is a burden, you know. Some of it is people not paying their bills. We've seen that in some of the school districts, you've probably seen that news. I know one of the goals of at least the Superintendent's Association this year, when we get to a new legislative session, is to push for changes in the funding for school lunch programs and breakfast programs at the same time, because districts are getting killed by this. You know, they're losing money left and right when it comes to their food services. And it's supposed to be a self-funded program, but for many, many districts, it's not, and they're in the red for it. So how can we address this? So that is something that's happening from that legislative standpoint. I'm trying to help with one of these questions. I just want to circle back, maybe, Mr. Bork, to your question here with the food. Is your concern, I'm looking at LMS right now, I just want to help so we can answer it.
Yep.
We flat budgeted it from this current year to next year, so it's a zero. But I think your concern is that in the FY24 actual, we spent 69,000, is that where the concern is? I just want to make sure we get the correct answer for you. Or I might be
Well, yeah,
looking at it
because, I mean,
wrong.
that's what Lauren just said as to why she increased GMS, is she based it on the 24 actuals.
Yeah,
So if you do that, the actual is 65, yet she budgeted 70. Then if you go to LMS and use the same logic, then it's 69,000, she's up to 75,000. And if you go to CHS, the 24 actuals are basically the same as what she's budgeted, 89,000 to 90,000.
yep. So the concern is that
I'm
there's,
just wondering what the reasoning is. It's
Got
like,
it.
she's saying it's based on 24 actual, then the number should be the 24 actual. And then my concern is she budgeting enough if she goes with 24 actual because of the increase in food prices?
But
for
shouldn't
next
some of
year?
that be offset by some student well, even just demographics within the schools? Because there are some changes, like, right, there's more in the elementary school, but fewer in the high schools.
Right, that's what I said
So
earlier.
if we, I'm sorry, yeah.
But the high school also gets different products based on nutrition regulations and different standards of that variety as well. So there's things that we serve at the high school that we don't serve at the other two schools either, and those do have a different cost associated with them. Also, the high school does 5 or 6 different options, where the elementary school does maybe like 2 hot options and a couple cold options. So there's more variety at the high school, just in general to supply for anyway, versus the other schools.
But would they be,
Which is why I didn't feel the need to increase that line at all.
so if we're offering more options, are we seeing more waste?
No.
Seeing more cost.
No, I just, like, there has to be something somewhere, because I understand schools are running the red, but we just did a food drive where donations were down significantly because people in town are hurting. So when people, and there's a number of families that rely on that food pantry. So everybody in town is hurting on money-wise. We can't keep going to the taxpayers for the same thing. Like, these people in town, regardless of whatever, there is anecdotal evidence that people in town are hurting. So to go out and say, now we need to charge more so little Timmy can have an awesome breakfast, is, how do I say that to my neighbor who is relying on the food pantry to feed themselves? So to me, like, we have to be very cognizant of the financial status. If there means we have to make changes or structural changes into what we offer, then we need to do that, because it can't just be the taxpayer who's feeling the pain here.
When the school board raised the prices for students, didn't that measure out at the top end of the cohorts?
Yes, yeah, we are the highest in
We are, yep.
our cohort.
That's what I.
So how much are we losing on each meal? And is there a way to get into closer to break-even status?
A hydroponic garden, which will
I would
provide
have to
lettuce
look
back
into
to the
I'm
food
sure there's
service.
a wonderful grant that we could pursue for that.
So just while we've been
There-
sitting here, I went
We're
and looked
working on
at
it.
our December 6th, 2023 school board meeting. There was a presentation from Lauren from Dining Services, which was a very thorough spreadsheet that included plate costs, it included the month-by-month peer cohorts, the October to October comparison. This was the meeting where we elected to raise the prices, so this, just for the room's reference, could be a good place to go look back on, to pull some data to compare.
Sure, but I
where
mean,
we're at.
2023, we're talking about, that it's dated data, right? So at this point.
It was meant to be dated data, I'm saying for comparison purposes.
No, I know, but the cost of food's changed, so how much are we losing per plate? Realistically.
Well, I think that's hard to calculate too, though, because the more meals that we,
We're losing couple
No,
hundred grand.
But I mean, that's gonna, the
If I'm
loss per
serving-
plate is gonna differ.
So give me a range,
So-
is it $10, is it $2?
So
Let's-
we've already confirmed that more information is gonna be forthcoming at our next meeting next week, right? So allow us to dive into this a bit further, get some more information as a board, let's discuss it and go from there. All right, any other questions for dining services? All right, that should be yours.
All right, buildings and grounds.
Thank you. Do you want to go line for line?
Yeah, we'll start with the energy prices and, yeah, please.
Increases.
No, that's.
On the same page here.
So we got our rates right here.
This is just the energy rates. If you wanna just go, if you just wanna start with custodial services, that's
Sure.
fine, and go through.
Custodial services, everything was level funded from last year. We did go up 5% on custodial supplies due to inflation. Equipment additional, $1. No equipment replacement. Any questions so far? Just moving along. LMS custodial supplies. So services, I'm sorry, level funded, pretty much everything. You'll notice a decrease in the LMS supplies for custodial due to we are asking for a new piece of equipment, and we'll get to that. So our stripper machines are old and we're looking for replacements. However, at the middle school, what I'd like to do is, I'm proposing a new stripper machine. It's a dry stripping machine versus wet, so we don't have to purchase stripper. 5-gallon buckets of stripper at $80 a bucket gets very expensive after a while. So I'm looking to try to decrease the custodial supplies. I'm gonna start off at middle school this year, hope if everybody approves, as a test run, give this thing a shot. So I'm hoping to save some money. The machine is, it's the next page, a little over $4,000 for the machine. If this is a success, I'd like to do all 3 schools after that. But this year, we're just gonna start at middle school, as they have the newest floors. So it, not only is it cheaper to run, but it's only gonna take one person to operate versus having a crew on standby to do quick rinsing, to do all your stripping, your edges. It's gonna save a lot of time. One person versus approximately 4. So not only is it gonna save time and labor, it's gonna save materials and supplies.
Dave, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So I think I heard you say that this is an LMS.
Yep,
Cost for the machine is $4,900. And then I think I heard you say that it would reduce custodial supplies, but it looks like that is flat
correct.
from 2025.
Yeah, we did not increase it, as we increased the 5% increase at the other 2 buildings due to inflation.
I got you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we'll know more next year after this is hopefully this goes through, save some money, we'll get better numbers next year, and hopefully we can do the other 2 buildings. That's my goal. Yes, sir.
Well, if it's successful, couldn't you use the same equipment at the other building?
Well, to try to share them out, we're gonna try to do that next year if it goes through, but to share one piece of equipment for 3 schools is pretty hard,
Is
to strip all the floors and classrooms.
it not easily transportable or?
It's not even that, to strip every classroom takes 3 to 4 weeks. So to bring that and use that at a different building, it's just you're robbing one
You're
school.
doing that in the summer.
You're doing it.
Correct.
You're just
Summer's
running
a-
out of time.
Yeah,
It's not moving the equipment, it's just, if each building, with a 3-year plan, each building has their own stripper, they're doing it.
So what I'm hearing is you could get away with 2 at the if you have 3 to 4 weeks, you can run 2 at
Well-
once.
Well, it depends on summer school as well.
Summer school, there's a,
Activities, other stuff.
Well, that'd be
there's a
great.
lot going
I
on.
think if we
So
can start with one.
I hear your argument,
Yeah.
I'm not, I'll just say, not convinced. So I hear it, but I think that's a logistical thing we could work around.
Have you looked into renting?
We could rent, we could look into it. Like to purchase it and have it ours, but,
Or just rent it?
Or rent it, and you don't have to maintain
2
it.
or 3 weeks.
something that we could look in, yep,
They do last once you purchase one along.
yep.
Yeah, when's the last time we purchased it, stripper?
Oh, it's been about 10 years, and the ones we currently have are pretty much worn out, so we're looking for replacements anyhow.
How many do we have now?
We have one at each building.
Dave, can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
Before I go through all the figures? So we were handed a new packet, just when we sat down, right?
Yep,
And the new packet shows from last year, $127,000 less. The first packet we had shows $276,000 less. So without me going through every single page, like the first thing I looked at was electricity, or one of the fuels, we're saving $25,000 on the new one, so,
that's from middle school.
yeah. I'm just wondering where, we just lost $150,000 since we got this packet. So I was going through it.
Save.
We save money on oil.
So what the
And
new
propane.
packet, yep, I can help with that, these are good questions. The new packet you got today includes the LMS lease in it, in part is the building and grounds line. We had just included the lease payment before in the giant Fund 10 document,
Okay.
but we wanted to account for it here in the building and grounds section, because that's where it is. So that 343 for the LMS lease is in here now in the new packet that you have as part of one of the lines. We documented it in our presentation last week, that was part of that increase that was included in all that, we haven't changed any numbers. We just wanted to represent it in building and grounds because that's where it is.
Where was it?
I don't know if I like that one. I appreciate the transparency. Well, we're gonna talk about the lease, have we discussed how we're gonna pay for the balloon payment at any point in time? Is that included anywhere in the budget?
Okay, what, sorry?
The balloon payment? There's a big balloon payment due on the lease for the solar panels. There's been no plan put forward as to how we're gonna pay
Mr.
for
Chair,
said balloon
I have a
payment.
question
So I'm
about
curious
the
as
cost
to if
of
in the
the
budget, we're gonna have any, or warrant articles or something, how we're paying for that.
Yeah, I think that's something we're gonna discuss with the board. We have an idea of what we wanna do, starting this year, and we gotta bounce it off from the board in the board meeting. We have some ideas on how to approach it. I don't think something like that is appropriate in this budget right now, because the solar panels haven't even been turned on. Sorry,
Yeah,
next year.
If only
I know.
somebody had printed that out at deliberative.
Hey.
But,
Do the best we can, we
Hold
got
on.
it.
the question is, yes, but we know that there's a balloon payment due, we know that it's been due in the coming of years. Is the plan to start putting money away for that, or?
The board needs to talk about that in studies. We haven't had a conversation about that in this budget. There's a question still on the strippers. I'd like to-
Perfect. But let's just face it, this isn't a surprise, this
So
isn't
I-
unknown.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm not able to find the cost of the strippers that you've mentioned.
The stripper machine,
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry,
No.
as Julie
it's on the,
said.
it's on page 2, I apologize for
Page
that.
2?
Yep,
And what was the cost
4,900
each?
for one, correct.
Just
For
one.
One machine.
Okay, thank you. And that would be an LMS.
I just for
One
the,
time.
just for the sake of looking, I just Googled how much it is to rent them, so you said it takes like 3 to 4 weeks, so for 4 weeks, this is just Home Depot,
Yeah.
maybe you can find a better deal somewhere. It's $1,236 a week per stripper, so.
I'm sorry, say that again?
$1,236 for 4 weeks
I think it
per
needs to get
stripper.
added.
So to strip each school, if you were to, I mean, you would need 3 times that, so that's $3,708. So ultimately, if the machine lasts 10 years, we're gonna break even after year 1.
I'm gonna pause this for a second. I'm gonna pause, yeah, just pause for 1 second. I'm looking at the one that was handed, you got handed the wrong thing today. I'm really disappointed, that's all right, that's my
So
fault
is it not in
ultimately.
this one, cause I'm.
You got handed last year's.
I just think that, I didn't see it in here.
Yep, that's why you don't see it.
Was the one that was in here before?
Yep, so we're gonna take it, I'm gonna take a deep breath, we're gonna back up for a second, these are good questions, this is why we go through this process. If you got a new packet today,
Yeah.
just take it out. rid of
Well, it
it.
makes sense, because my next question was,
Yeah.
we gained 4 million.
This is, okay, this is all right, and our efforts to be up to date, we printed the wrong thing, that's okay. So, okay, we're all good.
So we're gonna put the other one back.
Bear with me here for 1 second, I apologize to everyone. So, the packet you had in your binder, that you hope they're replacing in your binder right now, everything is correct there except for the LMS lease part of it. So LMS lease should be added on that as the last line. So that's not in there, right there. So we can go back to the stripper conversation.
Yep.
Floor stripper. Floor stripper.
So it's not 18, it's 12,
I'm gonna go on one other quick tangent, just because this is off the rails already, we're like half an hour into this. This is great.
Yeah, that's right.
I have this like quick philosophy, I'm gonna just stand on my soapbox for 1 second, so. I've said it a couple times in district settings, and I think this is like a prime example of it, is that our goal, my philosophy for us as a district, is to give our best today and be better tomorrow. And this is a prime example. Like 1,000%
Not
right
gonna be
now.
hard to be better tomorrow.
Where we've been working really hard, trying to square off this DOE thing that we've been like batting our heads against, working our tails off, trying to do everything else that's going on with the district. Again, not excuses, just the reality. And we screwed up this printout today because we were stressed about that DOE thing. So I apologize.
Well, I appreciate
This
you
is an
focusing on
example.
the tax bills and not on this, because this one I can do the math myself.
Yeah, so this is an example, we'll be better tomorrow. So tune in next week at the board meeting, we are gonna run a tight, efficient, board meeting, 100%.
There it is.
So bear with us as we kind of get our legs back underneath us here. So we're talking about floor strippers, no other
Okay.
types of strippers.
So,
Page 2.
so, it was mentioned that renting would probably be a better option, financially wise, but how about availability?
I think it's 1,200 per week.
No, it's 12 hours, it's 1,236 for 4 weeks.
Oh,
For-
4 weeks.
So that would be the
Times
cost
three.
the cost to do one school.
I'm thinking,
So you're doing 3 schools, so
That's
it's
just one part.
$3,700 per summer.
Which is good, so I might be able to do better.
I'm thinking availability. I'm thinking summertime is a busy time for floor strippers,
Are you
right?
stripping them multiple times in the summer?
No, you gotta go through the whole school.
Every room,
He said it takes 3 to 4 weeks
To
to
do.
strip a school.
the classroom, correct? Classrooms.
Right.
Yep. So, availability, I'm thinking summertime, other schools might be renting them, who knows if they're available, I
Right.
don't know. I myself like to have the machine in the closet, grab it, use it, put it away, clean it, put it away. It's ours. We maintain it, we keep up on it.
It's not.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a small one then.
That's like a,
This,
that's like a
so let me
residential
propose
strip,
this
that's way
to
easier to
Paul.
get
Okay.
off.
The one we were proposing was a 20-inch path. But anyways,
It will take 8 weeks
So it's
to
a
go.
About 6 to 7 weeks of those
The
days.
proposal we have in
Yeah.
our budget,
yes, sir.
that is something that we would like to do, is set to replace the floor strippers that we have here, one a year. is
I think
what's
it's gonna save a lot of money in stripper pads, just edger pads, just rinsing mops.
As much as I don't like it, there's always end of year funds potentially, so, I mean, if we're convinced that we're gonna save money on it, then
That's my goal.
there are ways, I would, before we commit to 3, I would, well, start with 1.
I'm just proposing one.
No, I agree,
Yep.
What I'm saying though is, end of year funds are outside my control, but it doesn't preclude the school from saying, hey, we could save money, let's buy one now.
Right.
So.
So if my math's correct, like just an overall question, I wanna double check my math here. With looking at the one that was in the original binder, adding in the, lease payment, the overall buildings and grounds budget is up $86,504. Is that correct?
Yeah, a significant part of that 86,000-ish dollars right there, because we do have a proposal in here to look at the LMS parking lot, which is pretty significant. It's about 57,000, a little over 57,000 by itself. If you go to page 9, of the buildings and grounds. You'll see it's the very first thing here. This is something that needs to be looked at some point. We have it in here as part of this particular budget. Dave's been working on getting some additional quotes for the work that we need to. This is one of those quotes right here. But that's the big chunk of this increase of the kind of buildings and grounds, is that 57,000.
So one thing to factor in as we look at this, but when we did the GMS parking lot update, that was a warrant article.
Yep,
So just as an idea of,
yep.
to pull down the overall budget, you reduce the risk of going default and having the money for the project.
Yep.
So,
It's on the CIP plan.
Part of the
now.
CIP
Yeah.
plan. We put it in here from the budgetary.
I don't
we put that-
disagree that,
Yep.
you know, it's great for you to float it as an idea, but thinking logistically, if the goal is, because we don't know, and I'm convinced people in town are hurting, so whether or not they're gonna go for a massive increase or vote default, by putting it in the warrant article, as much as some people, well, there is no means no, but it also means you could get your money and still have a default. So, it all depends on how you feel like you're, which gamble you're willing to take.
Dave, I feel like I remember that this like needs to be like regraded and stuff, right? Like,
Yeah, no, you're
I'm seeing, like,
correct.
Seal coat and potholes,
So
like,
if I may,
yeah.
doing the building assessment last week, walked around with the engineer. It was her recommendation to actually have a parking lot study done. And a lot of the reasoning is, we've had some pretty significant sinkholes in that parking lot. And the reasoning why is everywhere there's a catch basin is an underground pipe. And we already know from the beginning that when we did the renovation to the main entrance at middle school, when they ripped out that piping, it was all rotted at the bottom. So it's caused an undermining underneath the parking lot. This was just the main entrance. I don't know what that piping looks like throughout the entire parking lot.
So if I could just make a suggestion then, I mean, I think that obviously we need to fill potholes, right? Like we should be doing that, but maybe we should be budgeting for a parking lot study so that we make sure we're doing it right
Well,
as
not to
opposed
mention,
to.
wouldn't it be an opportunity to possibly expand that parking lot a little bit?
Correct.
Potentially, yeah.
Because the trailers are gone, right, my understanding. If not, at least something good came of the Elements project, the trailers are
Yeah.
gone. But that would allow us potentially to reclaim that, you know, better, more efficiently use the space in that parking lot, possibly extending it, expanding it. Because even though I don't have kids in there anymore, I have parked in that parking lot and it, parent-teacher night is awful. Events are awful, so
There is more parking right now.
okay, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look and see?
The reason that I asked Dave to add this to our, last year, we almost lost a teacher's car,
Right.
literally to a sinkhole. Where the drain basin is, the underwash, under the asphalt, pulled out about 4 feet back, about 2 feet deep, and about
Yeah.
6 feet
I
wide.
wish I could say I was surprised, but I've also seen my yard where I'm losing water constantly into the, losing
It's
sand into the.
It's the drop and the drop and the drop
Right.
from the top, and it's not good, and we had to call the teacher to say, come before car quickly, before it's gone.
This is why we included it for this discussion,
Right.
right here. We know we have to do something. We wanted to bring it to the board's attention, to the budget committee connection. We threw something in the budget
Well,
to
it
generate.
makes no sense to pave it just for it to fall apart in a year. or two.
Correct.
So if we know have a bigger problem, it is absolutely wise to get a grasp of what are we even dealing with.
Yeah, and I think we want to put something in to represent that in the budget, knowing we would have these discussions, to talk about whether it's a warrant article, talk about if it's a study first, to talk about what the next step is, what is appropriate to it. Because I think if we just put like a random number in.
Somebody might be like, wow, that was off the ground,
Yeah,
where did that
whatever.
come from? Yep.
Yeah.
You know, it is currently dangerous, you can't see the lines, you can't park correctly, and, yeah, I got some pricing on it. Is sealing it the right answer right now? Is crack filler the right answer right now?
Like, if we're
I-
having major sinkholes, I'm not
Thank
figure
you.
out what the actual, like, what do we need to do?
So, the lady from the CIPs recommended to do a study, parking lot study. So you'll be seeing that coming
Is
up.
that involve like core drilling, like what do you do?
I'm not sure. I don't know if they send cameras to the piping to see how bad it is.
That could be-
And I believe some companies will ceramic coat and line the piping.
That assumes there's still piping in there.
It's galvanized and it will rust, it does rust. What I saw come out of that main entrance, out of the middle school, the whole bottom of that pipe was all rotted.
Yeah.
And that was just a small 40-foot section.
So I think for the purposes of tonight and what's in this budget, I think we collectively agree that this probably will not stay in the budget in
Right.
its current form,
Yeah.
right? Allow the board to discuss and deliberate on it next week and
Great.
see where it lands and go from there.
Thank you.
All right?
Dave, did she give you any idea of what a parking lot study costs?
She did not. It was just a recommendation.
Well, just like throwing good money after bad.
Right, exactly.
All right, in terms of other updates for buildings and grounds and other
Yep.
budget drivers, what else?
So, the middle school, back to the middle school.
Okay.
4:30,
Which page?
that's what I'm looking for.
9, is that what you're looking at, Dave?
Which one, Brian?
No, I'm looking for
Earlier?
2620.
5.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
Okay, so, middle school, 2620, 430. Replacement of nurses' sinks and countertop. So she currently has 2 sinks in her bathroom that are completely outdated. The vanity that they sit on, or not even a vanity, countertop, I think it's original to the building. They're in dire need of replacement. The faucets are worn out, just, it's time, it's due. So that was one of the increases.
The health inspector got us.
Health inspector mentioned it also. Another big one at the middle school, $14,056, was the sinks in all, I don't want to say gang bathrooms.
That's what they're called.
That's what we call them.
It's like a gang light switch.
Well, I don't like that word, but okay.
Alright, so,
doesn't sound any better.
multi-sink station.
I like that, perfect. So in the restrooms, you get
The
fifth
student
grade
restrooms, there you go.
restrooms. Fifth and sixth grade restrooms, which are boys and girls. You get the 7th grade and then the 8th grade. So every single bathroom, this price is to replace the sinks. Get rid of the countertops, get rid of the sinks. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do a bolt-on, bolt-to-the-wall sink, as we have in the
Locker
locker
rooms.
rooms. It's a hit. They look good, they're ADA compliant, they're very sturdy, and that's what we priced out. It was the cheapest thing. And still a good quality sink, with quality fixtures too.
This is what we talked about, this is what we talked about with the end of the year.
End of year money.
Okay.
Any questions?
We were just trying to get a quote for it so that you'd know,
Thank you.
not necessarily keeping it in this part of the budget, but.
I think the other big driver is, we mentioned it last time, if you go to page 12, it's in the inspections, it's a little over $13,000.
So that's Campbell High School,
Sprinkler.
sprinkler heads. So they're due for inspection. Trying to get a little more information as far as how do you inspect a sprinkler head? But they're saying they need to be inspected, tested. I'm not sure if they're gonna set them off, I'm not even
Oh,
sure.
I would hope not.
I would hope not too.
Oh, that would be so.
However, we are due, it's expensive, there's a lot of sprinkler heads at Campbell High School, and that's something that is due.
I mean, usually it's a visual, like, is it covered in dust?
It's
Is
probably
it-
drained and put air to them, pneumatic
Thank
test
you.
doesn't.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking as
They
well.
gotta make sure they're not covered in dust.
So they actually failed us, not failed us, but they let us know about this last year, or this year, I mean. So we're putting in next year's budget, they were okay with it. So that was a big expense.
That's routine maintenance, so.
Routine,
it
yep.
it's part of having sprinklers.
Right,
I mean, it is that time.
yeah, it's beyond 10 years, but
Have
okay.
we done it at all?
We have, not that I'm aware of. And then,
It's 25 years old.
We're past, we skipped one.
We haven't done it in the last 4.5 months.
another big driver was the middle school music room. We're gonna install all brand new carpet. So this company had quoted us $8,354 to install all new carpet. However, they're gonna rip it out. They're gonna do all the disposal. It's gonna be no labor on our behalf, no burden to the custodians. They're gonna take care of it all, start to finish.
Carpet or carpet tiles?
Carpet tiles, yep.
I hate to see carpet, like a
No,
carpet tile.
it'll be carpet tiles, yep.
And the music room carpet is
It's bad.
disgusting,
Yeah.
if you think about what instruments pour out.
Spit valves.
Yeah.
Every
Oh.
time they have a spit valve and they're blowing into it,
I am a saxophonist, I totally hear you.
and it's in the carpets.
It's disgusting.
Yep.
It's gross, it's unsanitary.
What else?
So that also requires it, right, so there's.
Rubber floors.
Yeah.
Wooden floors.
What was that?
I said rubber floors.
Rubber floors, yes. They're more expensive.
Yeah. Does that absorb the sound?
The sound is the problem there.
It'll travel. Any questions on that?
Anything else you want to highlight, Dave?
I think we hit all the big,
Wasn't there concern whether we could refinish that gym floor?
Which one?
The middle school gym floor?
Is that the ones you replaced?
Well,
No, we
so
have
on
not.
page 5, right?
Can
we
we have
refinish it?
general, so
Yes.
back on where the
Yep.
nurses sit.
it can be ground down to
No,
bare wood.
but I
Oh,
thought
general
we were-
repairs and
I think
maintenance
it
for
was more like there was-
24,333, and you have finishing gym floor.
This one can be. Yep.
$200. Those are the exact same line items in last year's budget. Same dollar amount, same description.
So which one's this?
The question I would have is, what was done in this current, what's planned for this current year budget for that, for those dollars, and what's different next year?
Okay.
For the sink in the nurse's bathroom at LMS?
I thought it was.
No.
The last two.
The last two line items in that budget for the 24,333 and the 2,200, those are exact same description, exact same amounts budgeted in this budget.
Which page are you looking at?
Page 5.
4:30.
We'll look more closely.
Well, general repairs and maintenance, isn't that usually like a cost per foot? You know?
correct. Yeah, we just,
Not the way I like it.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Ross?
Just, one, all three schools had an HVAC annual service and maintenance plan.
Correct.
Two were significantly higher than one. I was just curious to why one was so low. Is it newer with less maintenance at LMS, or LMS was 2,000, GMS is 18,000, and the high school is 28,000?
It's basically the age, as you said, the amount of work and the amount of parts, breakdowns, trying to find parts. It's pretty much the age of the buildings.
LMS is our newest HVAC.
Right.
Yeah, it's just replaced recently, okay. So I figured, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Go over transportation real quick.
Sorry, can I just ask one question?
Which one?
Show the rates of the fuels.
Yeah.
Right. Last year, electricity was 17 cents. This year, it's 11. But our bill's at $22,000.
So I think we estimated a 10% increase for 26, for fiscal year 26. That's not reflected in the energy prices slide, but that's reflected in the budget line. I don't have the number back yet for,
So what are you projecting to be then?
what's that?
It's 10% of 11 cents. 13 cents?
Okay, I can,
$22,000.
all right, I can fix that. I will take a look at that.
But that's factoring too, we're still not getting electricity, right? Will that, once these solar panels will finally be online, are we gonna start seeing a benefit in any way? or-
Well, again, we're protected by the PPA, and we're paying.
Yeah, so you're paying at the middle school flat price for that.
So regardless of what our use is, it's not gonna be?
Yes.
Correct, but just the middle school, under GMS and SCHS, still dependent on the rate that we
I
get.
believe it is. CHS. Still 10% is not $22,000.
Once it's 10% of all energy, oil and propane potentially.
That was electricity.
Yeah. Okay, excellent question.
Good question.
Yeah.
All right, transportation,
All right.
year 2 of 5 of first student.
Yeah, good old first student, they didn't go on strike, thank goodness.
Yeah.
So we just have in here for the, again, the year 2 of 5 of contracts, so we have the increases accordingly. We have the late bus that we do, that they have, that goes from LMS, goes LMS and CHS. So we've included that in the budget. There's really not much to say about the transportation. That is the price of what it is. to, does anyone have any questions about the bus, about the transportation portion?
Last year, you went from 9 buses to 8 buses, which seems to be working. Definitely a little bit longer. We had some sorting out at the beginning of the year when it turns to bus routes, but first was pretty agreeable to us. We made a couple adjustments.
I'm sure they have a shortage of bus drivers.
We're okay. I mean, we have all our routes fulfilled right now. You know, we've had to get creative a little bit. With first, they've asked for a couple little things here and there, but we've been able to accommodate their requests as well. So far, we're happy with it. With the 8 buses seem to be working. Next year, we'll probably have to tweak routes again as the beginning of the year goes out and see who's actually on buses. But 8 seems to be working.
So we reduced the bus and we still get a big increase.
Yeah, it's a 6.5% increase that comes with the contract. I'm assuming not being here last year, that's why you went from 9 to 8 buses, is because you saw this increase coming.
And some of us have seen buses, and we're like, oh wow, there's a lot of capacity in that bus.
Okay, any questions on transportation? All right, shifting gears into the SAU and school board.
Yeah, so the SAU is pretty straightforward. We're pretty across the board with a slight decrease. Some various little supply things here and there, going up and down a little bit here and there, depending on postage and some other things like that. One of the big things we're looking at is legal expenses. We have budgeted for about, this year's current budget is $50,000. We had put in kind of 70 as kind of a starting amount. Looking at, because, you know, very conscious of being new administrative team, new special ed director, new superintendent, making sure that we're not getting ourselves in hot water by being able to have flexibility to reach out to legal. I think we're going to reduce that number though. We had 70 in there. We're getting our feet underneath us a little bit, so we feel better. So I think that number is going to come down to 55, which would put us closer to last year's actuals, which was 54 something. Last year, which is a slight increase on this year. We do want to account, we are going to definitely be negotiating an LEA contract next year, so that's going to be some of the services. I would anticipate us something around GMS, whatever the facilities improvement committee kind of recommends, there being something connected to that, that we would want to make sure that we're following things correctly if we're doing repairs or renovations or new build or whatever the case may be, something we work out legally for. So you'll see a slight increase in that legal fee, and while 70 is what's quoted in there, we're going to bring that down to closer to the 55 mark. So, any questions on that? They're pretty quick, smaller things. I don't think we're giving the board a significant raise there. Next up, we got Dr. Taylor for curriculum instruction and assessment.
All right. Okay, so as you can see, there's a decrease in the curriculum budget of $18,841, and this slide kind of highlights some of the drivers for some things. The decreases in the textbook line, the last few years, there were some new programs. There was a new literacy program, K-5, that was instituted, and then this year we updated the math program, K-8. So those were pretty significant drivers to push that line up. So that's come down to $57,850. And then I highlighted some of the increases. The supply line for the CIA budget was zeroed out for the last couple of years, but I've been doing quite a bit of professional development. I've been going in doing some coaching in classrooms, so I've been utilizing Thank You Schools for some of your materials because I don't have any. Like chart paper, highlighters, all of those kinds of things. A lot of highlighters. I am asking for a little bit of those funds so that I can continue those things to do with teachers and students. And then the major increase in my line, even though my budget did decrease, was in software. as we talked about last week, I was talking with the schools and we were looking at all of our software resources, and Chris and I have actually been working a lot on this too, to try and see what is where and what we're kind of using. And there were some things we were able to centralize, so I absorbed some of the software programs from GMS and LMS's budget lines into my line so we can centralize it more as a district. And then I put in for some piloting of science and social studies platforms. We did a lot with ELA and math in the last few years, and science and social studies is in dire need of some updating in their program resources, to say the least. We have moldy textbooks. Looking at the different options out there, a lot of companies are moving from textbooks to a lot of online platforms with print supplements. With that, we really want to focus, like we talked about last week, on striking that balance so that not everything is just on the computer. We want to make sure that students are also accessing print material. And we need to find that product that has that balance. And the only way to really do these things effectively is to get teachers involved and try some of them out. And pilots can be costly, but it does save in the long run, because once we figure out that platform and that program that really meets the needs and aligns with our district goals, then that's the one that we go for, and then that's the one that's implemented district-wide with a systematic rollout, PD, et cetera, and then it's utilized more effectively. There have been platforms that have been purchased without this kind of process, and we've seen through investigation that they're not being used. And why? What happened? Oh, we had that? What? So we really want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible and we're being conscientious of how we are obtaining these platforms and these programs. And that really starts with the classroom teacher and the implementation in the classroom and how the students are responding to it. And then those conversations in our curriculum review committee meetings, et cetera. So that's why you see that there. But if you combine the textbook and the software lines together, you can see that there's still a decrease of like 23,000 plus from what there was the year before. So,
but the year before had like a 5-year purchase, right?
It had,
So
there
there's still gonna
was.
be an increase at some point.
There probably will be, however, this is our first year and we don't know what we're going to need and what's going to be the best for us, for our students. And I want to make sure that when we get to that discussion, that we have very sound reasoning and rationale behind it.
Well, I appreciate not committing us to a program that we will later hate in 6 months. I think that's wise. I think we've been in that position in the past. So as much as I'm not a fan of the price, I am a fan of the long-term plan. So I think it's definitely, you want to get the teacher buy-in, you want to get them the support, and we absolutely want to find the right fit. So rather than buy a 3 to 5 year plan, again, that we all hate, then I guess it is what it is. So do you have a couple of items in mind for your pilot, or do you?
So what I wanted to do, so right now we are in the middle of a 45-day pilot of Newsella that we were able to get for free in talks with the company. And so our social studies teachers are really heavily involved in that right now. Kind of want to see where they are in that platform, but again, we don't want to say, oh, it's great, let's just go for it, right? We want to see what else is out there, so I want to get with them and investigate what options we have, and then narrow those down, because you know there's gonna be many out there that are gonna throw all the bells and whistles at you, and so we're really gonna dig in and see, and narrow it down to about 2 or 3 to pilot, and then go from there.
Have we talked to our cohorts and see what they're using and if it's been successful?
Yep, so that is also a plan to talk to people around us to see, but again, districts have different goals that are, and different demographic of students and all of those kinds of things, so it's nice to see what's out there and what's being used most often, which is, I mean, we all talk to each other. I'm part of, Brian goes to the South Central superintendents, I go to the South Central assistant superintendent meetings, and we all talk about, what are you guys using, what are you guys using, and getting teacher feedback for sure, but doing our own investigation too, and seeing, okay, so a lot of people are using this, why? And then we can, maybe that would be a choice that we try and see, along with these other things, and see what works best.
So how long a process do you think that is to review them and then make a decision that we move forward with?
It would take next year.
The rest of this year and next year?
Not the rest of this year. We would start I would want to get the teachers together in the spring to then start a fall pilot and then go from there.
And the pilot that you're talking about with Newsella is a result of something that happened at LMS directly.
Yes.
We had our social studies books for our 7th graders were literally covered in mold.
Yeah.
The teacher was coming in, wiping them with bleach, making sure that they were clean in the morning, and by the afternoon, they were covered in mold spots. So obviously, we had to get rid of the set in order to maintain student health. So we were looking for materials that could be utilized with our kids now, and keeping the nice fresh air quality that we have, fresh air quality, and not making anybody sick as a result of the materials that we have.
Yeah, I went over and saw that and was quite appalled. So we immediately got in contact, and Karen, our digital literacy, our digital media specialist, has been integral in that, as well as the literacy team at LMS, in helping roll that out and helping teachers, because obviously we had to act quickly, so a full-scale PD was not possible, but we did get some for them, and the rep was great. So, but that was a very quick necessity turnaround for something like that, because they need materials, obviously, but not moldy ones. So.
Dr. Taylor, I know you're still getting your footing with the district, right? And one of the things that, I'm hearing quite often with 3 kiddos in the district myself is feedback on iReady specifically, right? And how kids can game the system, and how it really doesn't serve a lot of value per se, and, seeing iReady in this specific budget line that we're talking about right now, and curious on what your thoughts are on the continuation of iReady being in the budget.
So, Brian and I have actually talked a little bit about the feelings overall on iReady, and there's these different assessments are it's an assessment culture, right, that is established, and a lot of times, especially in middle school, we lose the enthusiasm for assessments and we start gaming the system, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different things, and you can do that with a lot of different tools. I kept the iReady. There are some other things that I would like to look at, but again, I want to have conversations and look more into the history, because this is our first year here. So, keeping it next year, but I have a learning outcomes task force that I'm assembling, and I want to have these in-depth conversations with the teachers and see where their heads are at in this, because I've heard a lot about it, and I want to make sure that we're getting valuable, valid data back, because we're going to start doing, again, one of my focus areas is data-driven instruction. So We have it in there and we are going to be continuing it next year with looks at either how we can change the assessment culture in the use of iReady, or do we need to look at another platform?
So figuring that was kind of gonna be your response, and going back to the superintendent's themes for when we kicked off last week of consistency versus change, right? Also, when I look at this line and notice like the other 4 line items notably being new in the budget, right, and notably being change versus consistent, how can I support the newness of these programs if we're trying to maintain consistency in next year versus new?
Oh, so what are you saying that is new?
Well, I see like, I don't know.
Corey. That's current.
Okay, so Corey is a social emotional platform that has been
I'm jumping in for 1 second.
Yep.
Some of those things that you're referring to, the mystery science, well.
It's driving the price increases on that line, right?
Yeah, so they're just, you'll see in the building lines, we took everything out of the buildings and put them all under one roof, which is a software line.
Right.
So Kokori is something we're using right now, the mystery writing we're doing right now. Discovery Ed is something we're getting free from the state, but they're gonna keep doing that, right? Yep, that's, so hopefully that's gonna go away. But we really like the product and we don't wanna lose it, so we budgeted for it. So some of those
writing as well, like all purveyors of things that are addictive will give you a free sample and then all of a sudden they make you pay for it.
Yes.
So.
But I think, so that's where I think some of that consistency, I think when it comes to iReady, you know, there are other assessment models like that. Another popular one is STAR or Renaissance or whatever. Renaissance is a big company, but people call it as STAR.
Yep.
And it's a similar in that gives you that, you think of assessment, you know, Dr. Taylor and I have talked about this. Assessment kind of comes into like 3 pools. You have your super localized assessment, which is your in your class, the test or the quiz or the summative assessment that you do in a particular class. And that comparison within a unit of just your subpopulation of what you have in your school. That kind of state level, and that's where the New Hampshire SAS type of data comes to. You're comparing yourself to other people who are kind of starting with the same ball. We're in the New Hampshire, state of New Hampshire, locally controlled, everything going like that. How's your data? And then you want kind of that national component that you can compare yourself to, and this is where that type of assessment model comes into play. iReady is used throughout the world, but specifically in the United States, so you can get a comparison point of how your kids are doing for other countries. New Hampshire, we're fortunate, our kids are high achieving when you look at it across the country like that. So when you look at the relative New Hampshire scores, we're more in the middle of the pack in that type of realm, we'd like to get higher in that type of realm. But then when you expand it out and you look at us from a country standpoint, because we're a New Hampshire school, very supportive communities when it comes to education, we score very high in those type of models. iReady itself, I don't know a ton about it. I was a STAR person in a lot of places I've been before. That has pluses and minuses. I'm not going to say that's a magic system either.
Right.
But I think anytime when you have new leadership and it's an opportunity, I've heard people not be fans of iReady. I've heard people love iReady and everything in between. So
And that's why I really want to get more in the room with teachers. And I am a huge proponent of teacher feedback and how students are performing. As we're in the schools all the time now, and just looking and seeing and taking in how things are operating. So that's why when I asked like what's new, like I don't have any proposed like changes for next year. The only addition would be those pilots, but again, incorporating teachers in those decisions and those trials and seeing, but I don't have any intention of changing anything.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So would parents be a point of data on this? I think, iReady was amazing, it helped my kid figure out where the weaknesses were and we could tailor it.
Yep.
Then I have other people I've known who's like, well, they pulled my kid in twice a week to practice iReady. Like now, is that really an assessment or is that test taking skills? So,
It's 2 different components. So there's the assessment that happens 3 times a year, that's the benchmark. And then we also had, I can speak to LMS specifically, we were doing it twice a week, once in reading and once in math last year. The MyPath, which is different, so there's the test, and then the MyPath is that individualized instruction that's tailored to their needs, tailored to what the student has, but on a device. The better practice in our experience is to get off the device and go to the person versus, but we're still using iReady as that benchmark 3 times a year.
So I can totally, I could see the the utility in it, but I would be concerned that we're just, so I grew up in New York, they taught us to the test, and I would hate to see our kids learning to be really good test takers and not really being able to
No.
use the information.
Yeah,
To be honest, the iReady platform doesn't really speak well with the SAS platform too, so.
Yeah,
like,
and
you can't use
I-
iReady to prepare for the SAS.
No, I'm saying,
I,
you teach a kid how to take an iReady assessment,
Right,
so.
and I
Can't really do that
we have these, thankfully, we have very supportive everyone at this table, and we're doing vertical curriculum articulation meetings, and we're really focusing on the curriculum, and then we're focusing on how to use data, progress monitoring, et cetera, to figure out how students are performing towards our curriculum, not towards the test.
Well, and I appreciate it, because reality is, and I mean, I'm a relatively new teacher, but I can tell you how each one of my kids is doing without an iReady assessment.
So for purposes of the budget, iReady will remain in the
Yes.
spirit of consistency for next year as you continue to evaluate the program.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other drivers for your budget? Sounds like pretty straightforward.
Nope, pretty straightforward. It was, I mean, curriculum budget being down 18,000, like, that's pretty good.
It's down and having absorbed other lines.
Right. Can't promise that all the time, so
right.
sorry now, but.
Acknowledge. We've got Director Chris.
Oh, right.
Alright, so first we'll talk about the position of the network administrator. There was a couple questions about it from last week. I went over some of the numbers, and for last year I used about $19,000 in contracted services that alone could be done just by the network administrator. So that's just straight from the budget that I'd be able to remove years forward if I had something like that as a position. Plus all the benefits that we talked about last Wednesday. Another big thing that in my budget you'll see is that I, again, also moved software from the schools and brought them to the district. It just makes more sense than paying for Destiny, which all 3 schools are using, and I have to do it by 3 different lines opposed to the district line. And there was a bunch of those, so that's why you'll see on each of the lines in the schools, those went down to basically 0, I think, in all of them, or pretty close. And then the district line went up a bunch because I just absorbed it into the district, so I have it all in one spot. It's just something that me and Dr. Taylor have been working on, trying to consolidate, figure out where everything is, and see where it's coming from. Obviously, grades 5 and 9 get their Chromebooks. There was a question about that. When I budgeted for it, I took the current enrollment for 4th and 8th grade, and then I added an extra 10. I'm already out of Chromebooks from this year's purchase, just from new students and such like that, so that's why I bumped up from, I think we did 5 or 10% last year, I just did a flat 10. Laptop replacements for teachers, that line went up a little bit. I went from 20 to 25 for budgeting. I also took away some money and just did battery backups instead, because that's a lot of beeping and failing. I believe your art teacher hears a beep every 15 minutes. So we're trying to replace some of those so we don't have any more failures, and those are big costs, unfortunately. So I bumped up the line for laptop replacements. What I like to do is new staff that comes in, I like to get them a new laptop now. First year I was here, they gave them, like, no offense, Dave, gave them things like this, and I was like, oh, you're a new teacher, enjoy this one that's older than you. So, I mean, we have teachers that are actually younger than some of the laptops, I swear, it's ridiculous. So I like to get them all new laptops, and then I'm starting to replace some of the older ones, such as Dave's, for example. So that's why I bumped up that line from 20 to 25, just to have that wiggle room. Another one is the interactive panels, which we did LMS a couple of years ago, and they're pretty much set. There might be a classroom somewhere floating around. GMS has a couple classrooms floating around, and the next project is to tackle CHS and get, we're going to be doing interactive panels that are not the new line panels. We're actually going to be going to a high-end projector with interactive features. Talking with others, having that board just didn't seem necessary at that level, just because the students aren't generally walking up there, and if they do, they can just grab that pen instead and write on the whiteboards that we already have. So it's kind of a two birds with one stone. And then lastly, updating infrastructure. I just need to continuously do this. Everything gets end of life every 10 years or so, and there's a lot of moving pieces. Hopefully with the network administrator that we could be able to upgrade more per year, but keep that ball rolling. We have switches for all kinds of things. We have servers for all kinds of things. Running wires, patch panels. I can go on and on about all those things that in the background that nobody knows but hears probably as they walk by the door. That needs to be updated as well. That's pretty much it.
Chris, a question on 650 software. One of the line items in there says Power School Test Server.
Yep.
Should that be under hardware or is that software?
It's a software, so they host us. So our test server is also hosted by them. So it's just a separate place
It's
for
just a
like.
virtual server.
It's a virtual server, yes. Yep.
Questions for Chris? Your budget scares me.
Scares me.
Yeah.
In like a good way.
No.
God.
A lot of unknown stuff, like technical stuff that can go wrong with this budget.
That's fair. Yeah, it scares me too. Hence the network administrator position. Where the shot's
Plug there.
Speaking of scary, special ed.
No, it's Sarah, not scary.
Probably the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you. And also saving the best for last, so thank you for that. So overall, there is a requested increase of $242,000. I did note some of the things that did decrease in the proposed budget. So bilingual programs, which is our ELL, there's just a decrease in travel requests due to the, we also had, I was looking at the budget, there was 3 different translation programs, I believe, before, which I found out that only one of them is being used, so I got rid of the other 2 because that seems a little silly to have 3 if we're only using 1. The psych services line, which is all of our mental health, social work, school psychologist, when we get one. There's a decrease in number of testing protocols needed just based on the upcoming evaluations, number of independent educational evals, and then center vision, which is something that the social worker down at GMS uses. We require fewer licenses for those just because of Kukori kind of helping with the social emotional, but they did express that that was still something that they needed to have. The OTPT line is down due to just a decrease in professional services and travel. Transportation is down. There was less ESY transportation this year as compared to before. And looking years past, it looks like there was a 1.20% increase in transportation, and it's a 6.5. There's fewer number of orientation and mobility field trips, just because of the change in student needs. And then previously out-of-district transportation was going to 5 different locations, and this, at present, we are only going to 3. So that decreases the need for 2 buses. The notable budget increases is the out-of-district at $185,806. There was a move-in at the very beginning of the school year. The student was already placed out-of-district, and the team felt that given the needs of the student and other things, that it was best to keep that student in that school. There was a 5% rate increase in the places where students are placed out of district, and then just increases in contracted services that we were providing. And then professional services are additional contracts that we have out for different services that we don't have currently as positions here in the district, which is just a general overall 5% increase from those different service companies. So the 185 and the 17 pretty much make up the bulk of the increase. And again, as Brian had mentioned last week, you know, the rate increases from the professional services and from the schools kind of out of our control. Those are set by those individual schools or by those people that are providing those services to us. So we went with a blanket 5% increase for those overall.
I think one of the tough things is out of district tuition, obviously. Like it's the largest line, it's big. In previous budgets, this is still up, I understand what I'm about to say, but in previous budgets, it looks like there was budgeted for unknowns in terms of students not currently in an out of district placement, and that there was kind of reserve slots put for those. We're electing not to do that.
There's one here, that's TBD.
Yes, the student is out of place correctly. We're anticipating, I gotta be protective of some
Right,
information
so
here,
that's
but
not the traditional, one could move in, we're gonna use this. This is
no, that
actually a
student
real.
who is currently out of district. We anticipate to continue to be out of district, but we anticipate that the placement itself is going to change, or we know the placement is going to change. So, due to some unfortunate circumstances. So this is the kids, like there's not a ton here. Now we're gonna work hard, and a good example is we had a student move in. I don't want, again, share too much information. We had a student move in this year. It didn't make sense to try with everything going on in the young student's life to try and transition to our schools here in the district. That is gonna be something that we're gonna approach with the family in the spring. Like, does it make sense to come in and give our schools a try now that you're living in town, settled in, and everything along those lines. So optimistically, that would be something that we're continuing to work to bring kids back in the district when we can. We do, and Sarah, jump in here if I'm wrong, if you can fast forward 2 years, so not next year, the year after, we're anticipating a reduction, hopefully of 3 of these, because students will be graduating, moving on, and then we'll be able to reduce this line pretty significantly. Hopefully continue, the good practices that we have in our school. Sarah's doing an excellent job. Our whole entire special ed team is doing an excellent job. Keep more kids in-house here. So hopefully, when we make this proposal this next year, you'll see a significant reduction in that line because we have kids graduating out. Hopefully, we transition someone back into the district, so on and so forth.
Do we know the balance of the special services reserve fund?
$165,000.
Yeah. We might have to use it this year because we did have that kid move in. We might not. Like, that's why it's there, for the move-in. So, we'll see where that plays out. We're hoping not to get to that point because you don't want to use those trust funds unless you have to use those trust funds. But this would be one of those years where we could be in that situation. We'll see where we're at in the spring.
So I know I saw, I think it's in salaries and benefits. There was 2 nurses for students. How many more years? Right now, it's like $250,000, right?
Yeah, and they're both in elementary school, so we're looking for a while.
Sarah, I have a question on page 4.
Yeah.
The line for food shopping and cooking for S3 expanded program.
Yep.
Is the 120 times 44, is that a weekly or is that the number of students in that program?
It is so 44 would be per week.
Per week, okay.
Yeah. And I know that's increased significantly, but there's, I know last year, I believe there was not as many students, or the year before there wasn't as many students, I think there was only 5 and now there's 13 in that program, so the plus with the cost of food increasing, et cetera, we're looking to add some more money to that.
So to help people understand what that is exactly. That would be some of our more intensive needs students, right, as part of their life skill development program is that they cook, they serve, it's kind of also a job kind of practice. You can probably explain it better than I can.
Yes, well, you just did a great job.
Thank you.
These are, again, more the students learning more life skills. I will say the teacher up there has been doing a phenomenal job. Really working with them on cooking skills and cleaning and taking them out into the community, doing things like food shopping, budgeting, those kinds of things. So I want to kind of continue that momentum with that program and with that teacher because I think it's really taken off in a good direction, and I want to keep it going in that way.
And that's meeting their transition needs, as we look at that kind of responsibility of ourselves as we kind of help our kids out as they exit the school district.
Can I ask a question on page 1?
Sure.
The 51,800 that was added back in, so that was, please someone correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm remembering correctly, that was reduced by the budget committee as a bottom line deduction.
This is where it was hit. Yeah,
Correct.
so it was a bottom line reduction, and this is where, one of the lines where it was taken
Okay.
from.
I see it under other, right? I guess my question is how will that money be distributed throughout the remaining costs? Meaning, what
Like
does?
this year?
For next year, yeah.
Well, I think, I'm speculating on like what this would be. So I would say that bottom line cost was in there, anticipating that we weren't gonna spend as much in out-of-district tuition, right? So
Okay.
that's where that savings was. If you look at historically, I don't have let's see, there's one really good number here somewhere. Maybe it's on a previous document. But there's definitely a history of that line being budgeted at a significant amount and then the actual that goes along with it being significantly less. For example, last year, I think there was 600-something thousand returned right at the end of the year. That was the special ed funding for that. So that's essentially where that cut would come from, and significant part of that is that out-of-district placement. And I think, I don't want to critique previous budget models, that's not what I'm about to say. But in those previous budget models, they did have those unknown kids in there, budgeted in their out-of-district, right? They may have had 1 or 2 slots that would be like the unknown, like if this kid came in.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you didn't fill that slot, you had that extra money to kind of give back.
There was that as well, so we had more, as you stated, out-of-district placements. A lot of times they budget 1 bus per kid, and we piggyback in neighboring districts.
Right. So different ways of kind of eating up that
So we
money.
budget worst case, budget committee was like, come on, you're gonna partner up with someone else. And so the transportation would offset, see a reduction.
So we've really tried, Sarah's done a really nice job of zeroing in on specifically what we're gonna spend this on, and that is this year as well, right? Like we wanna, this is good and bad. When we report out in June, like when we're done with the year, we're hoping we have spent the out-of-district tuition money that we have budgeted for, like pretty close in the 90-95 percentile, right? Like that means we were accurate in our budgeting projection for that. We're anticipating that, probably. You know what I mean? As we look at the first semester, a lot of different dynamics. I don't want to go too far down rabbit hole about specific kids, but different things happen at different times. But that's the idea, is that is an accurate number what you're projecting, and we're not slotting. We are banking, if we have that emergency situation next year, that's where that trust fund's going to have to come into place, and that's why it exists, so you can utilize it in that type of capacity. This could be something that we talk about as a warrant article, putting some supplemental money into that trust fund so we can prepare for the inevitable, not the inevitable, but for the unknown, if something was to happen in that capacity.
Thank you.
What other questions for special education?
If there are none, that's all our presenters here tonight, so we can kind of open the floor for any general questions that anyone may have about anything.
So, I'm going back to the question of the restoration of cuts, I'd like to see that placed somewhere, because otherwise I'm gonna say, oh, restoration of cuts, we didn't need it. So, if there's actually a need for it, if everything else is budgeted appropriately, this kind of looks like it's a little extra. So unless we actually believe it belongs in transportation, it belongs in out-of-district placement, I'd like to find a home for it, otherwise it looks like an easy target.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I was thinking the exact same thing as Douglas was, but then I looked at it like 5 times. It's actually a 0 line item for other, because it was negative.
It was negative last year.
That's right.
So all it is a restoration back to 0. That's what we've done with the ADS.
I was thinking the exact same thing, I was trying to find it, and then it's 0, so there's really not anything else.
So another good, not a good way to think about it, but another way to think about it that personally, like I find easier, is I like to attach cuts to specific things, right? So there's a bottom line cut, I think it was 243 last year when it came to personnel, correct? Something along that line, I might have 243,000. We made the decision up front this year to reduce the paraprofessional, which I think came out to 213,000, right? So that's a tangible representation of what that bottom line cut was from last year, right? Like we saw that was a necessary cut. We're trying to this year specifically identify what that would be. That would be to cut these vacant positions that aren't required by IEPs and stuff. I think it's kind of a philosophy thing, whether you want to approach bottom line cuts in that way. There's pros and cons to it, right?
Wait till you go through this budget process, it'll be very entertaining. Well, where do you want to cut? Well, it's your job. Well, no, but where do you want it? Well, just pick a spot.
Yeah, so I think, that's part of the collaborative approach, right? If there's in other places I've been, there's been dialogue maybe from the board saying like, hey, we like the work that you've done, but I don't think we feel comfortable with this budget. Can you look at what would a $150,000 cut look like? And then you report back to the board, all right, if we're looking at a $150,000 cut, we reduce this line by this amount, and this would be the justification of that, right? If we were to, then that's 20,000 there. We could do this right here, this is what we're gonna sacrifice, but, and then you make the decision whether it's worth it, right? Like, Again, we present a budget that includes our wants and our needs in it, that we think is responsible. We know, we're not naive to know that this is exactly what it's gonna look like when we put it on the warrant in March. That's part of the process as we go through this. So as we meet with the board and they talk next week, and if they come back to us and say, we would like to see some reductions with about this amount of money, or where some areas what that could look like, then we're gonna have some answers for people to kind of respond. And, it might be, we say like, hey, you want us to cut 2 million, but like, really, we can't. Like, we could do this amount, right? Like, and what is that? And this is what that would look like. Or if you don't want it to get to this number, this is what you're gonna sacrifice in that type of cut, so.
That's a breath of fresh air, so I would love to, I love the talk, because I'm hoping, my conversations with you have been positive so far, so I'm hoping it continues that way through the budget.
Yeah, we all come from different perspectives. We're coming from the school perspective, the district perspective. Like, I think it'd be irresponsible if we didn't tell you what we wanted,
No,
like, part of the deal. Like,
absolutely, but I
so,
appreciate the collaborative approach as opposed to the combative one that sometimes we have seen in the past, so I appreciate that.
All right, if there are no other questions, that will conclude the budget review for this evening. One final round, and open it up for questions.
I'm sure there'll be some.
I encourage everyone to use the Google Sheets. We try to be responsive to that. Again, we try to provide answers within those. That you may have our answer and still not necessarily agree or think
Right.
think that's fair, whatever the case may be, but we like to include that. It also gives us, I can't emphasize this enough, this is, for a number of us, our first time in these positions, and it does force us to reevaluate and relook at certain requests and be like, and I think the legal one I mentioned today was a good example, Chair Cutter had a question about that to me, and after closer examination, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, that was, let me think on that some more, and that's an appropriate request and something that I could look at to kind of to look one closer at. So we welcome that feedback, we welcome those questions, collaborative approach, we want to get something we can all be supportive of. So.
All right, we'll come next week. With that, we'll close tonight's meeting. I will entertain a motion to close. Second by Ames. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 5-0-0. We are now wrapped for the evening. Again, we'll meet next Wednesday at 5:30. Thank you all. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice try.